Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Did you miss us? Because I certainly did. And I brought to you today yet another seasonal champion. We're going to cover them all. And the next in line is going to be Flying Fish, straight over from Southeast Asia. How are you doing, Flying Fish?
Hello, nice to meet you guys.
How are you doing, man? How was your day? Or how are your days since you won the seasonal?
It's very cool because I can now tell my parents that I just got $10,000, and that's very good.
Hey, mom, look. Video games are not that bad. I actually won money out of this.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Surprisingly, I would love that more people would encourage their kids or at least support them in the way some of them do. But let's move forward and let's actually ask you a bit about who you are in real life. For example, who you are behind the LR mask, not as a player but as a person.
So as you can see, I'm currently if you cannot tell, I'm a university student right now. And I'm from Hong Kong. And that's basically my life, like studying and then playing games and then sleep and eat.
What discipline are you studying?
You mean subject?
Yes, what is your subject?
So I'm currently, like many R players that I know, I'm studying something computer related, like uh, computer science related degree.
Oh, awesome. I started with that in not even college, before college in high school, and I said, yeah, that's not for me, it's boring. But I am glad you are enjoying it. And what is your background in terms of games or card games before you reached to Legends of Runeterra? What did you play before?
So I did have a little bit experience in Hearthstone when it just came out and when it was very cool when you didn't have to spend that much money playing it. I played it that for a little bit while, but then it got very expensive and I couldn't really pay for the card. So then I stopped playing card games for a long time until recently when last year when Runeterra launched. It was basically free and it's very good. So I decided to start playing Legends of Runeterra, and that's basically my whole experience with card game. Not much, basically.
And did you get to play Hearthstone competitively or join any tournaments or achieve anything in a tournament in Hearthstone?
No, nothing. I don't think I even played ladder for that much. I think I was like I played maximum 50 games or so, like very very brief period of time. Yeah.
Alright, so not much of a history in terms of Hearthstone, but how did you end up picking Legends of Runeterra? What was the reason? Was it someone that showed you the game? You just found it on internet?
I think I saw it because of League of Legends. I did play League of Legends for a while, not competitively, not at all. I'm not good at that game, but yeah, I really liked the game, and I saw on like the 10th University announcement thing video. They mentioned Legends of Runeterra, a free to play card game, and I tried it, and it was great. That's how I got into Legends of Runeterra. Basically, I always had this dream of playing competitive card game. I really enjoyed this type of game. I think this is like a perfect game for me, but it was expensive to play card game, and Legends of Runeterra is basically free. So that's what really got me into Legends of Runeterra.
So, is the reason that you actually grabbed Legends of Runeterra because it was free or more free than the other card games?
I mean, yeah, it's basically free. I didn't really have to pay for it to like unlock all the cards, so I could build whatever deck I wanted to build, and that was great.
Yeah, speaking about cards, do you have any favorite card in the game? And if you have one, why is it your favorite card?
My favorite card, I think I would maybe like apart from champions, if I choose a spell, I think um I would choose catastrophe, the cat, the 30/30 cat.
Why?
I think that's my favorite one. because it's so cool. You just have a 30-30 cat out of nowhere, and then one-shotting your opponent. I really like. I just really like that card, and I think that card has some super interesting potential. I've always thought of bringing it into some kind of tournament, but it's just never really competitive enough to be in a serious lineup.
I think you and Teal Red should deck build together. I think he tried to make Catastrophe playable at some point as well.
Yeah.
But do you have a card that you dislike or despise or absolutely do not suffer seeing?
I actually really like all the cards, even if it's like everywhere. I don't generally hate any card.
Come on, we need some bloodshed here.
What I despise seeing, maybe if I see someone play Passage and Earned, I'll be very sad because usually that means very bad things for myself. What else do I don't like seeing? I remember the time when Rasa was around. When you just get when you just get yourself like when you only have two powerful champion on the board and they play Rasa, that's just heartbreaking. What I don't like. I don't know. I generally like all the cards, so I don't hate seeing people play it, even though people say like recently it's atrocity. Every patch, basically everyone hates some card like Fizz TF. If TF was really strong, people hate that card. I don't know, but I generally feel okay about all the cards. I don't hate seeing the cards, even if they're broken or.
I trust is another.
Because eventually they will fix it, right? So there's not much reason to really hate the design of certain cards, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We've been talking about cards that you like, cards that you dislike, but I am really curious, do you have a card that you identify yourself with? It can be a champion spell, anything from the current card pool. Do you have such a card?
A card that I identify myself with?
Yes.
Oh, that's very difficult because I never thought of this one before.
Maybe something that is similar to you in some sense. Something that you usually do, like a trademark.
Trademark. Do you have any fish in this game? I don't think we have.
We have burble fish.
Yeah, we have burble fish. Burble fish is sort of flying, but that's not that kind of fish I'm envisioning. Let's see if I can find a better one.
We do not have any flying fish as of now.
We do have the weapon. One of the 2-mana 3/1, the Sky's Shadow. That's kind of flying fish. That's sort of similar to what I would envision a flying fish would look like. Do you know that card? Like
yes, when
you behold a Nightfall.
If you have Nightfall, you get
2 mana. Yeah.
Maybe specifically just for you because you won the seasonal and Riot will probably see this interview. They're going to add more flying fishes. That would
maybe.
be
That would be very cool.
We're going to tell them that. But we've been talking about cards for some time now, but I'm curious if you have any funny or maybe sad moments during your playthroughs in Runeterra from when you began up until now.
A lot of very, very cool moments. I have a whole folder of screenshots of like very cool moments I had. I can send you some. For example, I like most recently I remember a game I played Overwhelm, and the opposing Thresh, Thresh Nasus, the Thresh was super big. It was like 14 or something, and I have like 14 health. So, and they tried to one-shot me, but I actually have like several tricks up my sleeve. So I had like the 1 mana -2 attack from Shurima, and I also have Chochant, basically the 2 cards. And I actually survived out of like, so they were like just 1 off lethal. They have 2 more like cards, and they were just 1 off lethal from Atrocity, and that's a super cool moment because it's just hard to describe. Those kind of like clutch moments. I really enjoy those kind of moments when you're just like 1 health and then you hang on and win the game.
1 HP gamers all the way up until the end. I mean, you are talking about a moment in which you were thrashing Trash Nasus, so I think everyone is going to agree that it was a favorite moment for them as well. It doesn't see that much love. Well, it is a broken deck, but it doesn't see that much love. But with that, let's move over a bit into the actual tournament questions, because I am curious, how was the Swiss Open rounds experience for you, for example? What decks did you bring there?
So the Swiss round. I brought very similar lineups, but instead of the Overwhelm deck, I brought a Ashe LeBlanc deck with the Marauders, which was not the best deck to bring, I think.
Wait. You brought Marauders in Swiss rounds, and you made it out of Swiss rounds.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised because that deck lost to everything. Whenever I play that deck, I'm like, oh, why do I have to pick this deck? Why did I play this deck? And I think the reason I was able to make it out is because people look at that deck and felt kind of scared and banned that deck. So so I didn't have to play the deck, and that's pretty good.
The mind games worked.
Yeah, they just like saw like Ashe LeBlanc and then automatically banned it probably. Like Marauder really lost to a lot of things, except for Aurelian Aesol. But yeah, but a more refined Ashe LeBlanc deck would be very good for the tournament, I think.
I mean, you are very nice to people because now they can get World Championships points, and that deck gave some people some World Championship points, and you gave them some hope.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and did you switch anything in the top cut coming from the Swiss rounds?
So one thing I switched obviously is the Overwhelm deck. I think Overwhelm is generally much better overall. Other cards, I think I can't recall, but I don't think I changed much for the other two decks.
I think we are going to probably remember once we actually go over the decks in a few minutes. But before we're going over that, was there an opponent in top 32 that you were scared about facing?
So in the Swiss round, I lost to Mr. Beer, almost losing it all. Like it was like the second last round of the Swiss round. So I was kind of scared of facing him again because I lost to, because he was the last season's champion, and I lost him once in the BO3. So if everything goes well, I didn't really want to face him again. Other than him, I think there was also other people that I actually didn't get to face. Like Ping Ping Ho, that was a scary opponent, I think. Basically, also like the high rank ladder player that you can see on the ladder. I was generally not very confident when I got into the top 32, so I scared most people at that point.
Where am I? What am I doing here? I'm in top 32. Please get me out of here. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, kind of like that.
But you managed, more or less, if it was fun or not. You managed to get the big money. Was the meta that you encountered in top 42 the one that you expected it to be, or did anything surprise you that you encountered along the way?
So I was preparing with, I don't know if you know Storm, which is like a very high rank ladder player in the US Shard. I believe he topped like the ladder several times, and I was like preparing with him most of the time. And we came to the theory that a lot of people will bring TLC because it's pretty strong, and we also believe a lot of people will bring Thresh Nasus. We think like Thresh Nasus is the best deck in the format, and probably the deck that it's really hard to target. Like when you play it perfectly, it's just really hard for any deck to build a lineup that really targets Thresh Nasus. So we thought like more likely we were going to see some Thresh Nasus, and we were expecting Trundle, Lissandra, and plus X, basically the standard lineup. And what was kind of surprising is that a lot of people actually brought the Ashe LeBlanc deck. I think that deck is very strong. I was also surprised to see in the finals that my opponent brought the Ezreal and Teemo deck. That deck was like what was most surprised during the top 32 I faced. I didn't know if the deck is still played because I didn't test that deck, so I wasn't really sure about the power level of the deck. But it seems like there were quite a few of like Ezreal, Teemo in the tournament. Also, like for other shards, the obviously the Targon's Peak, that was very surprising. Also, a lot of the I think deep deck is generally good, so I wasn't really surprised to see deep decks like pop up so much. Yeah, that's basically what I can recall. The most surprising is probably the Targon's Peak and Ezreal Teemo, that two decks.
Yeah, we had some spice this seasonal, and we had top cuts. We had even finals where there was no Thresh Nasus and no TLC. That's what was more surprising. But moving forward, let's see your spice. Let's see what you have brought to this seasonal, because on this seasonal, we're going to talk about, obviously, your first deck, the Overwhelm deck. The most obvious question, why Overwhelm? Why did we bring Overwhelm to this seasonal?
So maybe I can first answer some question that you didn't ask. Why did not I bring TLC, even though I think it's a good deck? And that's kind of why, like that kind of answers why I bring Overwhelm. It's because I wasn't really good at TLC. I think when I play that deck, people say it's very good, but when I play the deck, I just keep losing. So I thought to myself, maybe I'm not a very good TLC player, so I decided to instead of playing that deck myself, I will play something that's easier, that's simpler to pilot. I think Aura is very interesting in the sense that you don't have to play something like some decks have super high skill ceiling, but also have a decent skill floor. I think Overwhelm is a deck that has a very decent skill floor, so you don't need a huge amount of like skill to pilot it correctly, because you generally don't have that much decision points to make. You play the units on curve, and then you play the spell when you have enough mana to play the spells. I think that's how I view Overwhelm. So it's a simple but strong deck to play.
What do you think are the hardest decisions in Overwhelm then, since you say it's a simple deck? It has to have some intricacies, not everything is simple, right?
So you have to be very careful about the curve. Like, when do you play certain units? So usually when you're facing your hand, you'll see a 5-drop, another 5-drop, a 4-drop, a 3-drop, and a Yeti, and you'll feel like usually, like say you have 4 mana, you have Renekton, and you also have a 1-mana Yeti. You can't play them both on the same turn, and you have to make the hard decision: do you play a Renekton or do you play the 1-mana 5/5? These kind of decisions sometimes is important for the game. Also, there are situations you have to be very careful about what the opponent might have, and also like count the mana to make sure that you can cast Battle Fury the next turn. Like, those are basically all the tricks, because there really isn't. I don't think there is that much like tricks to this deck. I think it's mostly compared to like a difficult control deck like TLC. I think it has a lot less decision you have to make.
Yeah, and I've seen a bit of Overwhelm in the top cuts of the seasonals, and your version is quite interesting because, first of all, it's different, And we would expect that. We would expect people to not think the same about the same market. For example, you are playing Kindly Tavern Keeper. What's the use for it? It's a card that you usually do not see in Overwhelm.
So basically, the usual version we see is playing the Shurima 2-mana 3/1 that gives a landmark that gives someone vulnerable.
The Rock Hopper.
Rock Hopper. And we usually also see the 1-mana +3/+1, Sharpen Resolve or something?
No. Shapestone.
Shapestone. The Sharpen Resolve was the other card, yeah, okay. But it was like the misname, if I remember correctly. Basically, so that two cards kind of forms a small combo, because you can't really, they're really, like the 2-mana 3/1 to me, so I was basically targeting Thresh Nasus and like soft targeting. So the 2-mana 3/1 is really difficult to use against Thresh Nasus because they can just simply play the Caretaker or play some ephemeral units like the Sand Soldier, and your landmark is just wasted. And that's very sad. Also, they have a lot of pings. Like usually they'll bring 2 or 3 Battle Feast, and that's just really bad if you're playing a Overwhelm deck when they generally don't have another good target. And 2-mana 3/1 is super good for them. They just take a slay count and then gets a body off you, and that really hurts Overwhelm deck because Overwhelm deck don't have that much units and don't have that much card draw. So instead of playing those 2 card combo, I decided to opt for Kindly Tavern Keeper, which is also a very good option. So basically, you first take some damage and you heal up. That's the play instead of playing units to prevent damage. I think in this case, also if you look at the curve, the 3-drop is somewhere sometimes lacking for an Overwhelm deck. So an early unit to play like Kindly Tavern Keeper is very good for this deck. That's generally why I decided to play this card. Even if you can't heal your face, you can still heal your units doing some like the plays, because your units will definitely take some damage, and you can also use it as a flexible tool for heal up your units, and that's also very good. So that's why I included 2 copies of him.
Yeah, you mentioned flexibility, and while I said that we have seen many different Overwhelm units, there's one thing that you guys have in common, and that is the inclusion of Three Sisters. So why did you include Three Sisters in your version?
So I was really so my favorite region is Demacia. If you don't know that, I really like the way that you can just play units on curve and use some spell mana, and then react to whatever the opponent is doing. So I really like that kind of playstyle. And so I was looking for some kind of reactive spells to include to make sure that I can play some. So basically that means buffs or fast speed, like single combat. But we don't have single combat in Freyo or Shurima. We only have buffs. And so I looked at all the buffs. 1-mana 3/1. So the 1-mana +3/+1 is obviously very good, but I can't really play it without enough landmarks. So I had the option of playing Flash Freeze and also Fury of the North. That's the 2 cards I was considering. But I decided that like Three Sister, because the flexibility is worth using, because sometimes I want the Flash Freeze, sometimes I want the Fury of the North to push for extra 3 damage for the lethal. So after like testing several versions, I decided that Three Sister is probably the although not the best, I would rather have 2 more Chill Chance than like the Three Sisters probably. But it was okay, so I decided to include that.
Yeah, I guess
I also added one more. Yeah, I also added one more Preservarium because I wanted more card draw to ensure the consistency, and that's about all the changes I made to this deck.
Yeah, that sounds very nice. And I guess we should thank a bit the developers because having three sisters for this specific situation, yeah, I want a buff, but maybe I want a freeze. Okay, now you can have them both. Take three sisters and thank us later. But
Yeah.
you said you expected Trash Nasus and you wanted to target it a bit. One card that I've seen people including was Ice Shard. At least a one of. Would you have considered or did you consider at any point including Ice Shard in your Overwhelm deck?
So, um, so what I think about beating Thresh Nasus is not trying to kill all its units because it generally doesn't work. They have way too many units that one Ice Charge is just not enough. Unless you have like a whole suite of like Avalanche plus the Blighted Ravine plus all the Ice Shards and Withering Will. Unless you have the whole package, you're not going to win by removing units. So so you have to like pick a route that actually wins the game, which is Overwhelm is basically racing them by having big Overwhelm units dealing a lot of Overwhelm damage because they generally don't have a good blocker for your Overwhelm units. This is like why Renekton plus Exhaust is super key to winning that matchup. Basically, you use Renekton as the 4-drop that push some chip damage, use like the Yetis to push some more chip damage, and then finish off with Battle Fury. That's basically the game plan. And so this is like before they can get a huge Nasus and Atrocity you. Basically on turn 6, turn 7, that you're going to finish the game before that through Overwhelm. Because they generally have a wide board and usually other aggro strategy is not going to race them down efficiently and effectively, and Overwhelm is, I think, the kind of deck that can do that. iShard just didn't really fit into the strategy.
Right, so you're basically saying you went for the racing game plan instead of slowing your opponent down as the aggro deck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a much more simpler and good way to put it. Yeah.
Alright, so let's just race Trash Nasus. We do not need to beat them by trying some finicky manners of playing Ice Shards, Ravines, or anything. Just be faster than them.
Yeah.
Alright.
I mean, iShard is good against Thresh Nasus, but it's not the only deck you're going to face, right? You're also going to face like Trundle Lissandra Control. You're going to also face like Aurelion Soul and also some other decks. So you're not going to like want that card in your hand when you face those decks. So in general, even though we're trying to target Thresh Nasus, we don't want to go all in, like bringing down win rates against other decks just for the sake of like 1% increase in that against Thresh Nasus.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense with the version you specifically brought. But moving forward, are going to see Zoe Aurelion Soul, and I do think there has been some noise made by this deck in the last days of the meta, of the old meta. So why did you decide to bring this, or why did you decide not to bring something else?
So Aurelion Soul is a deck that I really enjoy playing since when it not when it came out, when the patch after the patch when Eclipse Dragon got buffed. So even before Eclipse, even when Eclipse Dragon was like a 7-mana 7/5, I was trying out Aurelion Soul as a mid-range Demacia deck, and I really like the concept. I really never got into the point that I feel really confident bringing this deck into a lineup for a tournament, mostly because of the environment. But this environment is very different. This is the mid-range meta, I would say. Like mid-range decks is generally doing pretty well because Stratesis at its core is still an aggro deck. If you can use your bigger units to control the board, they'll have a hard time getting the slay count, and as long as they don't draw too many cards, you can generally win the matchup. So Aurelion Soul plus Zoe does a pretty good job into that lineup. Also, Zoe and all those small invokes can give you ways to deal with Trundle Lissandra control, like to deal with the Watcher. that's also a very good plus. As you can see, I'm bringing 3 Hushes basically to soft target Thresh Naxxus. So basically, to summarize that, all that, it's just this deck is pretty strong, so I want to bring it. And I'm pretty experienced with this archetype, so I feel comfortable playing this. So I brought this deck compared to other variants of other possibilities I could bring.
So would you say this is more of a comfort deck, something that's closer to your heart than some other deck that you might have brought?
Yeah, this deck is a really comfort pick for me. I really like this deck, and I just really enjoy as I said, the Demacia playstyle. Play units on curve, leave mana for spells, and that's it. The simple but effective strategy.
Yeah, and I do see, looking at your list, that you have brought just one copy of Star Shaping. Usually people go to 2, 3. What did we concede for Star Shaping? Like, what did we bring instead of more Star Shaping copies, and why?
So Star Shaping is a fast speed healing that does pretty good job of like when you against a lot of aggro, or when you want to heal up, and when you want to have the extra amount of finishing power. But Aurelion Soul just doesn't really need that. So the game plan for a good ASO deck, in my opinion, is to always try to hit the 7 mana plus 8 mana Aurelion Soul combo. If you cannot hit it, then the game plan is basically to hold on until you can play Aurelion Soul, and then outvalue your opponent with your Aurelion Soul. So you generally don't need the Star Shaping to give you value. So speaking of like healing up, so 5 mana heal 5 is very great, but a better plan, in my opinion, is to control the board as a mid-range deck. So if you can prevent that damage in the first place, why do you have to play your Star Shaping? Because if you consider it, it's 5 mana do nothing if you are not healing. So this is why I played more early units like Dragon Lieutenant and one copy of Lauren Protege to just control the board more efficiently in the early game.
Yeah, it makes
I
total
think.
sense.
Yeah. Also Mountain Goat plus this basic structure is a combo I really like. It provides some extra card draw and also a slight amount of healing for your dragons. Sometimes it can make a pretty big difference, like giving a gem onto, say, a 0 mana 2/1 challenger, and you can get rid of some like a buff Zoe in a like a 3 mana 3/3 or something. It's generally useful, I would say, in a Oriental deck. Sometimes you want that 1 mana like +1 power for your ASO to level up. So yeah, it's not too much different from other strategies. I just feel like 1 Star Shaping is enough.
Yeah, you have been mentioning that the way to play against aggro, as Demacia at least, is to actually challenge their board, like have something to put in their way. And this idea is not really strange at all. And when I was trying to tech another deck back in the metas when Fiora Shen was a thing, I talked with the first champion on you seasonal then, and he told me, all right, you are trying to do this and that, but you just need to represent yourself on the board. If they cannot go past your impenetrable wall, you won.
Yeah, basically. That's basically why I chose like to play only 1 Star Shaping. It's a pretty good card, but like 1 is fine.
And we are also seeing triple concerted strike. Why did you feel the need to add an additional one? Because I think people usually go 1, 2, or maybe not at all.
I think this card is super essential for Aurelion Soul, because also like I would consider maybe removing 1 copy of like Star Shaping for the 8 mana Judgment. But I think 3 Concerted Strike is generally more flexible, and also like usually you use Concerted Strike against open attacks to protect yourself, or you want to use it to remove another key unit. And because you have a lot of high attack units, Consider Strike is generally very important, I think. I don't know, I just really like the card. Basically, that's the easiest explanation I can give. Like, it provides me a lot of flexibility and a lot of ways to interact. Yeah, like when you really want to remove a Thresh, you really want to consider Strike. Like, it just it hits too many spots to not include 3 copies, in my opinion.
And you mentioned
Basically.
Judgment before. Why did we not see any inclusion of Judgment? I think people usually want one Judgment. Maybe I have it, maybe I do not. It's for you to find, Mr. Opponent.
Yeah, I think for tournament, one Judgment is pretty good. Especially Judgment, because it's such a powerful card and people generally have to play around it. But if you think about this meta, what card does it hit? Like Toronto Lissandra Control generally don't care about if you have Judgment or not, because they will always have like a flash freeze to counter your strategy when they attack, or they just like use the Watcher to obliterate your deck and they don't care. So against that matchup that we expect to see a lot, that's pretty useless. Against Thresh Nasus, usually they win through like the Atrocity plus Nasus, so Judgment is kind of useless. It can somewhat prevent an early damage, but they also have the chance of using the Rite of Negation, and you just like automatically lose because it's too expensive. Against those two popular matchup, Judgment really just doesn't do anything. So I don't think it's a meta call basically to not include it and to go for the third Consider Strike to provide the removal and the interactability basically.
Yeah, and as you said, 8 mana is quite the investment. While if you invest 5, you lose to a 4 mana card. You don't feel that bad because you just lost 1 mana opposed to 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright, moving forward to the last deck. This is not going to be a surprise, ladies and gentlemen. You know who we are talking about. You exactly know who we are talking about. We are going to talk about the good old Susan. Why did we bring this one?
It's good. You know why? Because it's so Thresh Nasus, as I mentioned before. I understand that like a lot of people think that this deck is still targetable, but throughout testing, we find that it's super hard to target Thresh Nasus because of the card draw and because of the Atrocity finish. As you can see, we run 3 Atrocity because it's just so good of a combo that usually it doesn't like. Also, many people don't realize is that Atrocity is also a very good removal card. Like you can sometimes use Atrocity on your buffed up the 1 mana 2/1 fearsome, the Bakai.
Yeah, the Bakai Reaper.
The Bakai Reaper. Sometimes that's really good as well. So basically, Atrocity is very flexible as a fast speed removal spell. Even if you're not targeting the enemy base, you can still use it to survive some very tricky situations. So basically, it's very strong. This deck is very strong and very flexible as well. It can go like fight all the meta decks and then still get a generally good win rate. So we chose this deck, even though it's like despised, probably not the spiciest deck.
You mentioned the flexibility of Atrocity. Is that why we're playing free, or are we playing free because we really want to draw Atrocity and finish the game? What's the reasoning behind playing 3 copies, not just 2?
2, yeah. Usually people play 2 copies, but we like after a lot of testing, we found out that it's just too essential to have Atrocity as a good finisher, especially when we have the Rite of Calling to draw into our champions very reliably. So we will usually always have a Nasus in hand or on the board at like 7 or 8 mana. and at that point, you just really want Atrocity to finish up the game. So we run into more situations of not finding Atrocity compared to 3 Atrocity, like get your hand stuck, basically. So the value it provides is super essential. Like the stability of like 3 copy of Atrocity is very important. Also because Atrocity generally don't get stuck in your hand. You can still use Atrocity as a flexible removal tool, even though very expensive, but can still save your life, that kind of card. So this is why we run 3 copies of it instead of 2 copies.
So the short explanation would be Atrocity is bonkers. If I don't have Atrocity, I lose. Conclusion, get more Atrocities in.
Yeah, very straightforward, yeah. I'll try to explain it more shortly. Yeah, basically, Atrocity good, more Atrocity please.
Exactly. But now we have been talking about your decks, your strategy. You've seen how the tournament went. It's done and dusted. You won. But would you change your lineup in any meaningful way after you have seen how you played in the top 32, or based on what you faced?
So we spent a lot of time on the lineup, and I think I wouldn't really change my lineup without a serious amount of practicing of like, if I have more time to practice Trundle Thunder Control, maybe I'll bring that deck, maybe I'll not. But generally, I think this lineup is what I consider to be the best lineup I could pilot, because I have to also consider like how well I could pilot, and I'm generally pretty happy with the performance I got in the in top 32, like how I played the games. I think it's pretty fine. So I wouldn't really consider changing the lineup significantly. If I'm going to, I also have a special lineup, like a even more spicy deck that no one has seen before, like a Demacia Shurima range with Renekton and Shyvana. I was like testing that deck for a long time as a tech against other decks basically. I got pretty good win rate, but generally I was like scared to bring a super spicy, unique, like crafted deck for a tournament like this. So so maybe if there's a chance, I would like to showcase that deck. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, we've talked with the winner on Asia, and basically they brought spicy decks like Pig, Vlad Brom, and such because they actually were qualified through the last season or so. Now that you are qualified, you get to experiment.
Maybe, yeah. I think I will. Who knows? Maybe in the next tournament I get to play some cats. Who knows?
Oh my god, don't tell me you are going to play Pursuit of Perfection.
Yeah.
Alright,
basically.
you said it. I don't think
maybe.
somebody is going to target Pursuit of Perfection.
Maybe if it becomes a super meta deck, who knows? Maybe I'll play some like out of all the decks, I'm very happy to see it like out of all the top lineups. I really like the lineup of basically the triple aggro lineup with the Stony Suppressor and with like Scouts, and also with like, yeah, I really like that lineup. I think maybe next time in the tournament, if I get the chance to pilot like an aggro lineup, I'll maybe attempt it, because like this is a small trick that we have, like because tournament is very long, you have to play 9 games to qualify, so you also need to consider how you're mentally playing. Like this is why I chose some easy to pilot deck like Overwhelm, not because of like it's super I mean it's super solid obviously, but also because it's a lot easier to pilot than TLC. You don't have to spend too much time thinking of every single play you're going to make. So generally, you'll have a mental advantage against your opponent. Like so, when you go into like the later stage of the game, you're not going to make mistakes because you're really tired. that's a very big advantage as like to play a long tournament like this. That's a smart tip for you guys.
That would be nice for people to remember. And you actually prepared my next question because I was curious, how much do you think comfort is important when you are playing in this type of event that is either very long or it is for a high stake?
So speaking of comfort, I think if you really want to achieve like a good result, you really have to put practice into all your decks that you play. You have to identify yourself as like what kind of player you are. Because I think LR is such a balanced game that any strategy can thrive. Like we saw aggro, we saw mid range, we saw control lineups that top the tournament. So basically you have to be very comfortable with your playstyle, and then so that's my opinion towards it. It's very important to play something that you are very comfortable with, and then you're confident that you're piloting it correctly.
All right. Another tip of advice that we managed to snatch from you and pass it on to the players. That's a win for us. About the actual tournament format, I'm curious. How did you feel about the actual tournament format? Did you feel like it needed some adjustment, some change?
So to qualify for the tournament, like to top 32, you have to play the 9 rounds. I think that's a little bit much. Even though I think 9 rounds, like after they adjust the timing, it still feels really, really intense. Going into 9 rounds. I don't hate it. I think it's pretty okay. Like it's more reasonable as like a way to engage players with the ladder maybe, but it still feels kind of much. I have to say that's my opinion towards like the 9 round system. It feels pretty tired to play 9 rounds all in one day, but other than that, I think it's super good. Like we can do everything online in game, and we also have generally pretty good support, I guess. Yeah, that's. I really hope to see like a lot of players mention on Discord some replay system to the games maybe, like so we can more easily watch our games even if it's not streamed on the big stage, so we can come back and see our plays. Some kind of functionality like that would be super cool to see, basically.
Yeah, that would definitely be nice. Not only for tournaments, but in general to have a replay gallery and you can watch what you did wrong. There are currently softwares, but if you build that in game, I do not know generally how hard it would be, but I think it's going to be a big plus for the game overall.
Yeah.
We have been talking about the round system, but I'm curious how are you feeling about Riot Lock? Do you think it's the right way to go forward? Did you experience other tournament formats that you felt more comfortable with or that you thought are better for this type of event?
As you know, I'm not the kind of like super experienced card game player, so I can't really say I experienced a lot more formats other than this Riot Lock thing. So Legion Lock format is basically what I practice a whole lot, and I think other formats are super interesting, like the side deck format is super interesting, but for such a big tournament, I'm not sure what ways can really improve it. I think only time will tell. Like, even if I say something, I'm not sure, basically. That's my answer. I'm not sure. I'd rather to leave this kind of more professional, hard decisions to the Riot game designers to figure out what kind of like the best tournament way to do it. Currently, I'm generally happy. I think it did challenge me to think of a good lineup. It did it did allow me to express what decks I'm comfortable with and what kind of spicy ideas I can bring to a tournament. So I'm generally okay with this format. I don't mind this format to stay. That's my opinion, basically. But also, I don't really mind them to experiment and change to some even more interesting formats. like especially when they say like the third party support for the support for third party tournaments. I'm really looking forward to that. Some tools that can help tournament organizers organize their own style tournaments more easily with the game. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, speaking of third-party tools, I think you are already involved in developing
Oh,
such a tool. So maybe you can tell people more about that one.
yeah. So we have this tool. So mainly it's for master ladder players, basically to allow you to view a history of yourself, and also view a recent history of your opponent. Even though, like recently, we have a bit of controversy around this topic, like whether or not players should be doing that, and Riot haven't really gave out a confirmation on what their policy is going to do, because generally they're against like a minute-to-minute advantage for the players, and I highly agree with that. And so basically, we're providing. So we're more looking forward to the future of some sort of meta snapshot, basically a more accurate, more up-to-date snapshot of the ladder that provides. Because for me, when I look at Mobalytics, when it recommend top decks to play, I'm like, yeah, I know these decks well, and that's just it. I'm like not really intrigued by what the decks like the top decks they're talking about, and I'm more intrigued like what spicy new decks is coming up, invented in a master ladder, that kind of thing. So basically, build this software that uh, kind of building towards that goal, basically. So it's still in development, but you can find a recent release version via my partner Storm's Twitter, I think.
Yeah,
He
we'll probably
posted,
put a link so people can access it
yeah,
and actually find out what's happening around
yeah.
there. But the reason I asked you this question is actually to bounce back to the tournaments, because I think this tool would be very useful in the tournament, in the seasonal tournament setting, because we know that you can view the decks before when you are viewing all three decks from your opponent. But what if instead of that you could just view the deck that they are currently playing? If they would implement something like that, I think that would be great. That's why it's a feature that I would love personally to see implemented in the seasonal tournaments.
Ah, very interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that because you can actually see the decks, right? So it makes sense to have a tool that allows you to see the deck in game. Yeah, that makes sense. That's very interesting. I never thought of that, but that's a very good reason for that
As
to
much
exist.
as we like paint and screenshotting, I think that would be better.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Something like that, like just pops up on the screen and then show you the decks. Yeah, that would be much more comfortable than like screenshotting and then have to switching back and forth to like view the deck.
Maybe that's something for the future. Now, let's get to the actual burning question. Did you plan to do anything to the money, or what are your plans with the money that you won?
Ah, so it's a lot. Like I'm still not sure because I was genuinely surprised when it still feels so surreal to me. So I really didn't really plan out what I want to do with the money, but I think I'll probably use some of the money to help host some custom tournaments, to uh, like give back to the community a little bit. And also, I would like to use some of the money to do some investments. And that's about all the things that I was thinking of. Not too
You can
much.
also invest them in developing the software.
Yeah, sure. Like investing in the servers to provide better features. Definitely. Yeah.
Getting ideas by the time we are speaking. So now that everything is done and dusted, you mentioned Storm, but is there someone else that helped you prepare? Do you have any sponsors, any partners, someone that helped you along the way and you want to shout them out now, because that would be a great time?
I'd like to also shout out to um, I know like a lot of people don't know, but Ace is a streamer in like the Chinese platform, and he also helped me a lot with cool ideas, and also like a lot of not really well known names also helped me prepare with my tournament, like practice games with me. Maybe one day when they get famous, but yeah, especially Storm. Like it's mostly like him, like really helping me out with lineup preparement and like a lot of ideas. Like for example, the Three Atrocity is from him. That's why I mentioned like we put Three Atrocity, not I put Three Atrocity. Yeah, basically.
And even those unknown names, you can make them known to the world now because you can shout them out.
So, because their name is in Chinese, so I'm not too sure about how to like shout them out. To be honest, like yeah, but how do I say that? I want to shout out to. It's hard to say.
We can help you with maybe some comment in the description of the video instead of that, so we are going to make it easier for you. I think that would make make it easier. But moving forward to the actual ending of the interview, because we've spent a few minutes now. If you had, we are going to ask this every single champion. If you had one thing or one thought that you would like to leave the audience with, which one would that be?
One thing or one thought
Yes.
I want to. Even though Irelia is not released just yet as of recording, but I think she'll be very cool and very fun to play. I don't know if that counts. I'm really looking forward to the new season, and like my mind is all about the new decks, new spicy decks I can build. So that's the only thought I could have in my mind right now, to be honest.
And I think a lot of people are looking forward to the new season and the new spicy brews as well as you do. And I think you are into their sentiment as well. And with that, we are going to close this interview. I would like to congratulate you again for the awesome display in the Southeast Asia seasonal and for accepting to join us for this interview.
Thank you very much for having me. Sorry about it's like not give you a lot of time to ask questions, but yeah, it's really a pleasure to share all my ideas, and thank you for having me.
And that's why you are the expert. We brought you here to talk people through your ideas, through your text, through everything, and share a bit of your wisdom. And so congratulations again, thank you for accepting, and ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned with these interviews because probably this is not the first and probably this is not the last as well. So see you around.